The number one cause of death in children and adolescents age 1 to 19 years old in the United States is guns. Shortly after 3 children and 3 adults were gunned down at the Christian Covenant School in Nashville, Tennessee in 2023, a powerful influencer said it's worth it to have a cost, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment. It's worth it. This morning's text is called The Binding of Isaac, and it finds Abraham binding his son and laying him on the altar on top of the wood. Abraham next reaches out his hand to take a knife to kill his son. To bind is to force, to compel, or to require. So the death that we force, compel, and require our children to die by the thousands every year is death by gun. And some people think it's worth it. Worth it to bind our children, lay them on the altar on top of the wood, and then take a gun and shoot them so that we can have the Second Amendment. Our newest neighbors, along with certain citizens of this nation, experience binding every time masked people with guns kidnap them from the street. I saw a recent subway ad that said in English and Spanish that if ICE had detained you between 2000 and 2012, you might be entitled to up to $10,000 in compensation. And I immediately thought, this is a trick to bind up more people, to put them on the altar on top of the wood and sacrifice them. This nation, our nation, is in an ongoing binding frenzy with the people of Gaza, with our incessant, unchecked willingness to provide weapons to the state of Israel, to ignore the starvation of Palestinian people, to refuse to use the word genocide, and to block other people and nations from taking meaningful action. Hateful, poisonous teachings in the name of God bind the gospel of Jesus Christ, warp it, repackage it, and hand it back to people, saying, violence is the price we pay for peace. Genocide is the price we pay for safety. And dehumanization is the price we pay for power. A violent white man shot and killed a violent white man this week. And historically, Black colleges and universities were targeted and threatened. What I know, living in this body, Black and female, the descendant of enslaved people and sharecroppers, one of the ones that Malcolm X called the most despised group of people on the planet. What I know is that indigenous folk, Black folk, queer folk, brown people, the poor, Muslims, Jews, those with languages and accents that are other. What I know is that violence lands on our bodies. And our bodies land on altars, on top of wood, face to face with the knives that seek our destruction. This nation, begun with the genocide of indigenous people and built on the bodies of enslaved Africans, is bound up in violence. And it continues to bind Isaacs on the altar on top of the wood. This nation takes knives and guns and legislation and lies and tries to kill particular people while lamenting the death of those who would sacrifice us on the altar. How easily, how compliantly, how happily we put certain people on the altar, on top of the wood, and draw our knives. There are hundreds of Isaacs bound and on the altar daily in Sudan. There are about 10,000 Isaacs on Rikers Island on any given day. They are literally bound, as many wait to be charged, as they lack financial resource to pay their bail or hire committed legal leadership, as many of them live with mental health challenges that our current mayor promised to address outside of the carceral institution of Rikers. A few chapters before this one, Abraham goes toe-to-toe with God, arguing against the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. How is he good with sacrificing his youngest son? Sacrificing God's promise to him and Sarah. Sacrificing the promise they've waited a lifetime for. God has been so present to Abraham. They spoke regularly, effortlessly, clearly. But after the near murder of Isaac, the intimacy of direct conversation is gone. We like to say that Abraham was faithful. But what if Abraham in this story wasn't faithful, but feckless? You were going to kill your own son and not say a mumbling word? There are commentators who say Abraham failed the test. Abraham failed to protest. He failed to make an argument. He failed to say, this is not okay with me. And we have too much sacrifice energy happening right now in the world, and not enough going toe-to-toe with God energy. You want to send the National Guard into D.C.? Okay. You want to hold federal funding hostage unless educational institutions dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion programs? Programs that benefit disabled children, children of color, and poor children? Okay. You want to take the funding intended to provide health care for poor citizens so that billionaires can keep even more of the money that they will not be able to spend in this lifetime. Okay. You want us to put Isaac on the altar, on top of the wood. Okay, we are happy to do that, and we won't protest at all. In fact, some of us will bring our own knives to kill him, and we will call that being faithful to God. I believe the near sacrifice of Isaac crushes God. I believe the actual sacrifice of children in mass school shooting after mass school shooting after mass school shooting after mass school shooting after mass school shooting crushes God. I believe robbing the poor to make rich folk richer, allowing food to go bad rather than feeding the hungry, justifying the ongoing destruction and devastation of human life in Sudan, in the Congo, in Gaza, and beyond as necessary, proves that we do not know who God is. Abraham, for all his intimate conversation and connection with the God of creation, proves he does not know who God is either. And God never speaks directly to him again. In the midst of death and destruction, we learn two powerful truths from the text this morning. First, we must act in love when we do justice. We cannot fail to protest. We need a Jesus justice that reminds us that our actions must be rooted in the life and teachings of the rabbi we claim to follow. Too often, our work of justice, our emails, our meetings, our rhetoric, our protest, even at times our worship, wants to be disconnected from love. Too often our justice looks like punching the other side in the face and running off with the power until they come to punch us in the face and take the power back. If all we do is fight for power, church, love and justice lose. We must act in love when we do the work of justice. I want us to agree. I'm not going to make you say it out loud, but in your heart, I want us to agree at the start of this new church year that a foundation of love is non-negotiable. The other piece of the work for me is not forgetting the power of planting our small, ordinary seeds. This is seed planting year at the Riverside Church, our first year in a 5-year plan that will get us to fruit on our 100th birthday in 2030. Without love and the work of justice grounded in Jesus, we are planting poisoned seeds, and we will produce poisoned fruit. We must plant seeds of justice in love, individually, but most often collectively and collaboratively. Plant small seeds this year, church. Have toe-to-toe with God energy this year. Plead with God for the lives of our siblings, because this is the kind of energy this moment demands. When Reverend Mira issues the call to show up for the Isaacs on the altar, let's not come with the energy of sacrifice. Let's stand up for the seeds of promise this year. Seeds that get Isaac off the altar. I know it feels overwhelming, believe me. I know. But we are not alone. We have one another, we have partners in this city and around the nation ready to plant seeds for love and justice with us. We can all be great, because as Dr. King said, anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve, he said. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. That's Dr. King. On Friday mornings, I take a long 5-mile walk with one of my best friends. And last Friday, we met in the park, as we typically do, and got only a few feet before I noticed a young woman weeping on a bench. It's New York, so my first impulse was, she's having a moment. Let her be. Keep walking. But almost immediately after that, something said, ask her if she's okay. Excuse me, miss, are you okay? Do you need some help? She couldn't get her words out fast enough, but they were all in Spanish. Her husband was inside. He'd maybe been detained at a regular check-in. She wasn't clear. We weren't clear. I called the people I knew could help, and they told me what I could possibly do. So it was decided I would go inside this federal courthouse for information, and my friend would stay outside with Yami. Armed with her husband's name and her jagged story, I surrendered my phone, went through security, and was met with surprising helpfulness and kindness. Take note, church. When we commit to planting small seeds, we will sometimes find co-laborers where we don't expect them. Yami's husband was being arraigned at 11 a.m. My friend and I decided we would go. I knew from participating in Court Watch that outcomes are better when people are in the room where it happens. My friend and I grabbed coffee and croissants and spent the next almost 2 hours learning Yami's story. She has 2 young children. They entered the USA through Texas, and she was terrified. Just before 11, we went inside, introduced ourselves to the public defender, who assumed we were friends of the defendant, and we took our seat. Nearly 2 hours later, the judge began his ruling with, "I understand the defendant has family present today." That felt right. We made eye contact with the young man. They had him in leg shackles. We put our hands on our heart. We put our hands in prayer position to let him know who we were. He had no idea who we were. But I think he was glad we were there. I prayed silently while my friend doubled over and wept silently. In the end, Yami's husband was remanded to the federal marshals with the likelihood of being turned over to ICE later. We cried with the public defender outside the courtroom. She kept apologizing for being unprofessional with her tears, and we kept thanking her for being human. She told us Yami will likely never see him again. So we pulled ourselves together and went with the lawyer to the park to deliver that news to Yami. We got her connected to weekly support, small seeds planted. The lawyer connected her with the immigration lawyer in her office, small seeds planted. Eventually, we all hugged and went our separate ways, watering those small seeds with our tears. Me and my friend, a couple of middle-aged women, not the senior minister of the Riverside Church, just middle-aged me, stopped to sit with a weeping neighbor in the park last Friday morning. It did not make the news. It did not stop the tide of Yami's suffering or that of thousands of immigrants in this country. It didn't make everything, or maybe anything, all right. It was coffee and croissants. It was information and presence. It was seeds and tears. But we did not fail to protest. What small, ordinary seeds will we plant together this year, Riverside? How will we come out of our pulpits, off our high horses, out of our ivory towers, and go out into the world, into the parks, touching the soil, planting the seeds, and protesting the Isaacs on the altar for sacrifice? How will we pull together and water these seeds with the tears of our love You're going to love this. If I needed any more confirmation that God is calling us this year to the work of planting small seeds of love and justice that works to get the Isaacs of the world off the altars that have been erected, God left us all with a message, something to meditate upon. All day, Yemi called her husband Isa, short for Isaac, which for the English speakers, her husband's name is Isaac. And because it helps me to have a name, to have a story, to keep us faithful to the call, Isaac will be mine this year. And I hope he'll be yours too. May God give us strength to plant small seeds this year, church. May God give us grace. To the glory of God, amen.